All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Dunn County Legislative Agenda Meeting to order. A call to the roll will show that everyone is in attendance except our chair for this committee, Gary Steen, who is excused. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Supervisor Morehouse moves, Supervisor Headland seconds. Any speaking to the minutes? Right, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes, minutes are approved. Public comments. Okay. And apparently Andrew has one, or is that the one you have?
Are you doing Terry? Okay, then Andrew has one.
Oh, unless you want to do it.
No. Go ahead.
All right. So on Monday, May 6th at 10:35 a.m., Terry Nichols sent the following. Comments to the Legislative Committee of Dunn County. I thank Dunn County for supporting me in the past in moving the funding of all public higher education to the state level. This past year and for 2 decades, I have asked for support from local elected officials and across the state to do the right thing. The pursuit of all public higher education in this state is completely an individual choice, not mandatory. Now, school districts across the state are having referendum fever, which puts the property taxpayer in a crossfire between parties. Democrats are stating that school districts aren't getting enough funding from the state, and the Republicans are stating that the school districts are not managing their funds properly. Keep in mind that the state has something like $3 billion in the kitty to address issues. The Blue Ribbon Commission on Education back in 2018 didn't solve anything. My understanding is that the Wisconsin Counties Association represents the counties in this state. The WCA has a legislative agenda as well with input from the counties. I question the effectiveness of the WCA. That leads me to Dunn County and the effectiveness of communication with local elected officials. My suggestion is that the Legislative Committee have a set list of questions to ask our local officials. Attending elected officials will answer the same questions regardless of party. Different departments of the county have spoken at these events in the past. I'm suggesting that this could be achieved with a handout before the event. The Legislative Committee will develop the questions according to the county's needs, and the elected officials will answer the questions. This all goes back to constituent versus caucus. Dunn County residents, like many other county residents in this state, are expecting more from Madison than partisan power politics. Maybe IT could video the meeting as well. Video is a communication tool used by many entities, public or private. Accountability and transparency are words used by our elected officials all the time. Dunn County should expect the same. I thank the committee for past support and look forward to the committee's progress ahead. Terry Nichols, Town of Colfax.
All right. I recognize everybody in the room, so unless there is some other public comment that someone sent in, I don't have anything in my queue. All righty. Item 5, consideration of actions to be taken by the Legislative Commission. Discussion about costs of translation services. And this is the place where I know Gary had an approach to this. I'm not sure what it was going to be. I believe it was something that came up out of Judiciary and Law. So John, if you want to.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Yes, Katie Shaley in the courts was talking about the added cost of translating for people who come before the court. Dunn County in particular has a little higher rate of needed translation per capita because 94 runs through, and a lot of people who get pulled over are from all sorts of different places. And the state law mandates that the counties pay for the translation services. And so it's Spanish and Hmong and Ukrainian and the longer list. And so I approached Chairman Steen to see if perhaps asking the lawmakers to increase some funding from the state for that, or change the law that mandates that we pay for it, given the increases all across the state, really. That's the gist of it.
All right. Anyone want to speak to that, or shall we just? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I guess I was on Judiciary Law, and I brought that up many times. I don't know if you noticed that. And the only answer I got is we got to do it. There's no question about it. We got to pay for it. If I remember, it was like 43,000 last year. We had to come out of pocket, something like that. And the state only gave us so much, where I think we have, out of our pocket was 29,000, if I remember, somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, it's kind of high. Yep.
All right.
So when I was talking to Chair Steen the other day, he indicated that last week when he was at the WCA, or recently when he was at WCA, this is on their radar and likely to make their legislative agenda as an issue.
All right. That's good to know. I might suggest, since this is a on consideration, we should, I think probably Judiciary and Law could put together a specific request to go on, add to the legislative agenda, and we could just,
Yeah,
as part of your normal process, which, we'll get down to item 4 here soon.
yeah, I think that makes sense. I can ask Katie to add some details and put that together.
Any further discussion? Okay. 2, interplay of gas tax and county levy. And again, I'm not sure if,
So I verified with Dustin this morning. So this came up out of the either the last county board meeting or the CIP workshop, I don't remember which, related to the fact that we do not pay federal gas tax on our gas, but we do pay state tax. And there was commentary about perhaps we should consider advocating for not having to pay state tax either. So that's how it ended up here.
okay, I think that would have been part of the discussion at CIP. Anyone want to address that, or should we do the same thing, refer it back to the appropriate committee to put together an item? Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Medicaid expansion. I know that Gary that's one of the things that Gary has frequently talked about pursuing in terms of reducing our both HHS costs and neighbors costs, hopefully, if we can sign, get the legislature on board with that. Diane, do you think that would be something the HHS might wanna?
Yeah, I think this is something we could take on. Obviously our costs are significant, and probably we wouldn't be dealing with the closure of major regional medical centers if there had been acceptance of the federal Medicaid. And so, yes, we can take that on.
Okay, and I suspect that that's something that the legislature will be more receptive to, starting along about next year.
So just by way of reminder, in July of 2022, the county did pass a resolution putting that particular issue on a referendum for the November election. In November of 2022, by 51.49% vote, it did pass in terms of an advisory referendum to advocate for kind of universal healthcare.
Yeah, and I certainly make that part of the structure of the request. Anyone else want to speak to that one? And then 4 is just we're planning on having the fall legislative agenda meeting. Everybody have your committee take a look at whatever you have done in the past for legislative agenda and/or things you might want to add, and get that together so we can coherently deal with it.
Mr. Chairman, is that a
President Morris.
November due date? I believe that's what we've done in the.
I think it's worth discussion. We did talk about it. Well, we did, but we did our presentation to the legislators early in the year. And then last year we kind of bypassed that because anyway, so this will be a biennial budget year. And so I think but it's also an election year. So it's sort of like pick your direction that you'd like to go.
I don't know, maybe shoot for, I would think maybe shoot for October to have it for this committee. It's not like it's particularly onerous, or I think we're gonna have a huge transformation. Then we'll have to figure out when we will have the actual legislative agenda meeting as well.
The Health and Human Services Board always has really lengthy legislative ads, so we'll probably start a little bit earlier, but if the due date is October, that's all good.
Okay. Supervisor Quinn.
I may have missed it, but was Mr. Nichols' suggestion that we sort of reframe our legislative session into a more of a Q&A type thing?
I
Or-
believe that was the general thrust of
Yeah,
this.
is that something that, because then if we are, then we need to think about this in the context of coming up with, rather than a laundry list of things, you know, maybe 10 or less questions that we would want to.
Yeah, I'm dubious about the efficacy of that, given sort of the time constraints that we
Yeah,
normally are
maybe.
under. But I know that the discussion that we had last time about our next legislative agenda meeting was to ideally have a, social time, a chance to actually sit and talk with legislators, and that personal interaction probably would be at least as efficacious in terms of convincing anyone of anything as the laundry list or anything else. And I know we did a certain amount of not Q&A, but had the legislators address the agenda to some extent last time, and I don't think it was very manageable. It was kind of a mess.
I mean, if we stick with that same format or that decision, which is more of a social gathering, then it doesn't seem like it makes much difference to me. Then it might almost seem like it better for it to happen after the election. And we know who
Yeah.
the actual representatives are going to be. If we go with a more, you know, a more deliberate format, then before the election would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the reasons why I was thinking if we have an October deadline to get it all together, that gives us a chance to run it through county board and have that it'll all sort of put together along about the time we know who our legislators will be. And that would probably be something that will be at worst worth at least taking into consideration in terms of format. I think January, February, March, somewhere in there is normally when we've had it in the past. Supervisor Kinnear.
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree. We need to have the more informal one, rather than just standing up there and telling them what we'd like. Whenever we have it.
Okay, well, and I think that's probably the next time this committee formally meets, we can have a actual discussion of what sort of format we want to take. Since it's not technically on the agenda here, I'm gonna bring that bit of discussion to a close.
So similarly related to kind of legislative agenda, I did put at your seats from Chair Steen kind of a summary of what WCA is focusing on currently on the top, and accomplishments from the last round on the bottom, and then in the May 24 Wisconsin Counties Association magazine are all of those items on the bottom, and it talks about what action was taken or what happened with those. And then Nick, could you just address WCA?
Yes, I'm going from memory because I don't have the message up, and I don't know who at least every week, sometimes more than once a week, I get a blast from the WCA. The most recent one that I got talks about upcoming deadline for submitting resolutions to be included in the WCA legislative platform. So I just wanted to remind, I think the deadline's the 24th of June, which, and again, I'm going by memory.
Andrew's nodding.
Anyway, yes, so there is still time if any of the committees want to bring forward a resolution to the county board that's legislative in nature, that they'd like the WCA to consider to include or to support something that's being proposed, you still have time to do that. And if there are any resolutions in, say, the last couple of years that the board has already adopted that have some legislative quality to them that you'd like to send up to the WCA for consideration, we can also collect those up and bring them back to the county board in June, and send off whatever might come of it to the WCA. And then they have their meeting in September, where they review all the resolutions that come from all the counties that submit them and make a decision about what to include in their legislative platform. Yep, that's it.
So the only thing left on the legislative agenda, there's a sentence, is next meeting schedule is needed. I presume if people come forward with stuff that they want to take to the WCA board in June, I'm going to guess that Gary is not going to be the person convening a particular meeting, but if your committee decides you want to forward something to the WCA legislative agenda committee, which I may be on again this time. Anyway, let me know, and we can have another one of these before the exec next time. So currently, we're not going to schedule one, but the availability is there. And with that,
So this will kind of kill two birds with one stone because it is on the exec agenda as well. But if we did a legislative in June, so Beata and I are headed to the government finance officers, the governors, I was going to say, Government Finance Officers Association conference in the early part of June. And we will be someplace in transit on the Wednesday, get on this other agenda, Wednesday, whatever the Wednesday is that we would typically meet, Wednesday, the 12th. And so was hoping we might be able to move to Thursday, the 13th. And then that would put legislative on that same day.
tentatively, yes, for me.
Is that okay?
Yeah, if we plan on that and just send it out, I will double check my schedule when I pick up my bike bag, which has both of my phones in it.
All right. So if there's legislative, it would be that same day then on Thursday, the 13th of June.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the legislative agenda committee, which gives us 40 minutes to, I don't know, go get a cup of coffee. Possibly with some brandy in it.